Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing great. Happy Monday. Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers out there, including mine. We're going to continue our theme that we started this week, and hopefully this week we'll really get underneath it together. Last week, for those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. Last week we spoke about sort of getting the mind right. Very important that we're always in that space of getting our minds right. What ends up happening when you do this is that you look at your day a little bit like an outsider, which is tremendous. You create visibility, you create some distance between what you do and who you are, and that allows you to change what you're doing. When you see yourself as being separate from what you do a little bit, now you can like look at it like an outsider and like tinker with it. Does it ever happen to you where like someone asks you for advice and you're like really good at it, and then like it comes to your own life and you can't apply the same advice you gave somebody else? Yeah, it's because when you're in it, it's hard to look at it from an outside perspective. And now that we're in that situation, as soon as we get a little bit of distance from it, which is what pre and post of thinking of your day does, you start realizing that you get a lot of the wisdom that you need to become successful. That's one of the great secrets, in my opinion, of life, is that God gives you everything you need to be successful, including the wisdom. Many times when you learn things, yeah, the rabbi, the mentor, the book will give you a new idea. But if you ever notice when someone gives you an idea, it like almost feels like you knew that already. There's a lot of wisdom in there, but the bias is what blocks us. There's a great book. This is the work of a man named Daniel Kahneman. What he brought to this world is, Daniel Kahneman is an Israeli psychologist that won a Nobel Prize in economics because he brought the behavioral piece to economics. He showed that human beings aren't robots. And his whole theory was that the thing that blocks us the most is our own bias. We have enough that our biases that are blocking us. And that was last week. Now, this week we started talking about yesterday in honor of Mother's Day. And we'll do a lot about mom this week because it's very much the way you grew up is very much the way we need to continue to evolve. And we spoke last week about the 1% rule. Dave Brailsford, how he brought to the British cycling team this idea that let's stop worrying about going from like 0 to 100. How about we just get 1% better at like everything? Make it like an obsession. Look for anything you could be better at. 1%. It doesn't take an enormous amount of effort to be 1% better at anything that you do. The difference between where I am now, 1% from here, is just a little bit of effort. It's a little bit less sleep. It's a little bit more, sort of like attention when you want to give up. I tell this to my children all the time, and I'm also guilty of this, but it's easier to tell your kids about things and do it yourself. That's the joy of parenting. You get to tell your kids things that you can't do, but now you're wise for making your kids do it. All the time I tell my kids, like, if you don't get it, it's because you're not sticking with it long enough. They did this great study on Asian Americans that came to America. I don't know if it still applies now, but they did this study, I think, in the 80s or the 90s, and how they excelled in math at a level that outpaced the American students. And they did this study as to why. They thought they were just born smarter. And they realized that their culture and their home, based on their culture back when they came in, they were children of immigrants. And so their culture was to sit on things longer, to not give up on problems. Like that was sort of the culture that they grew up in. And so when you're doing math, like it just takes typically a little bit longer for you to get. It's more analytical. You can't just memorize it. And that's why they were excelling. A lot of times in life, the difference between where we are and 1% is just a little bit more attention. It's just sticking with the problem a little bit longer. Staying in the conversation a couple more minutes before it's sort of mentally disengaging. It's trying to deliver a product or a service. It's trying to connect to something deeper a little bit longer than you did it before. So if you've ever prayed, it's just sticking with the prayer. If you've ever a little longer, it's sticking with the diet a little bit more. It's holding back a little bit more when you're at that fridge. That's all it is. That's 1%. That's all 1% is. So why does this work for? So let's just circle back now. So for those who are here for the first time, hopefully you'll follow. But if you've been with me for the past week, we're going to circle and circle and circle because everything's interrelated. Last week we spoke about this idea of neuroplasticity, right? Every time you have a thought, the thought creates a new neurological connection in your mind. So let's really appreciate together. What does 1% do for your life? Why is the 1% rule so critical? In the book we call this the +1 rule. If you want to grow in life, the way you really grow in life is you have big visions, and that what the vision really does for you is it gets you excited. It doesn't tell you how to get there. You don't know how to get, if you have to go somewhere. I remember one time I drove my family down for Passover to Florida from New York, right? The one and only time I did that. I thought it'd be a lot more sort of like family romantic, like they have like all these, like, you take your family to Florida and like the kids fall asleep like gently in the back as the sun sets down North Carolina, that whole like one person that has family that can sit for 12 hours tells you that, and you're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I pack my kids in the car. We're like driving, I think like 5 hours in, we're like, are we there yet? And I'm like, no, the GPS says 20 more hours. We're not anywhere near there. And I remember that feeling of just like, when you plug in, you're going a long way when you plug it into Waze. Like my grandparents have a house in Delray Beach, Florida. It's like I was in Long Island, Delray Beach, Florida, and then like you get like 4 billion things that you have to do. There's no way you can get to the vision that we set for our lives. That's not where your growth comes. The vision is just the destination. You get excited about where you're going to end up. That's not really where it is. Really where it is in the +1s in your life. Like really where it is +1. It's when you go through your day and you start to become clearer as to what +1 means to you. All right, that's really the beginning of how this works. So what is the +1? Why does it work for your mind? And the answer is because if you look through your life, if you remember when we spoke about neuroplasticity is your brain making connections every time you have thoughts. So if you go +10, that means you've got to like rip out what is a normal connection for you. So if every time I feel stressed, I reach for the fridge, now I want to stop that completely, it's a lot of hard work. I need a lot. It's possible and we can talk about it, but it's a lot of hard work to do that. But if I've got this connection to reach for the fridge, and all I'm really doing is delaying the fridge for 1 minute or for 5 minutes, for my brain to adapt the feeling and just include that and evolve that isn't going to require an enormous amount. It's like this equivalent of the kid who looks at the yellow box and says, Mommy, Cheetos. So in his brain, it's Cheetos. That's all his brain picked up. Because remember, he's listening and he's trying to figure it out. And he hears people saying Cheerios, Cheerios, Cheerios. Then his little brain is just forming connections. There's a ch, there's an e, there's an r, Cheeros, Cheeros, Cheeros. And when Mommy goes Cheerios, what she's doing is she's adding another layer to that same neural connection. She's not blowing it up and going, that's not Cheetos. That's called Fruity Pebbles. And the kid's like, Fruity Pebbles? Those are all these loud sounds I never heard of before. The yellow box has now got F's and T's and P's in it. Like, what are you talking about? Mommy does it. She looks at it and she goes, no, those are Cheerios. She adds another level of that connection. You can imagine almost like a wire or a rope and another thread that just evolves that word a little bit more. It evolves the connection a little bit more. It doesn't blow it up. It just takes it up a notch. +1 just evolves your thinking. It doesn't blow it up. You always did this thing. You always spoke to this person. You always went to work. You always did your emails. You always spent sometimes in introspection. You always prayed, right? You're doing it already. You're doing all these things already. It's just that when you're doing them, the connections are not full. They're not achieving your goals. If you go +1, all you're doing is adding another layer to the connection. And if you stick it long enough, your brain's like, we know how to get here. We're not doing something brand new. We know how to do this. We always went to this spot. It's just that when we went to the spot to do this thing, whether it's work or family or introspection or religion, whatever it is that you're doing, wherever you're doing it, usually at this point we give up. Usually at this point we say enough. I always speak to my children, but usually at this point I say, I can't anymore, kids. Enough. Get to bed. I can't read you the book anymore. I usually by 9:15 I'm fine. By 9:30 I'm like screaming, get to bed. I eat well until 2:00 every day, and then at 2:30 I don't know what it is. By the time I get to 4:00 I'm famished, and right? You look at your life, the connections are there for good. It's that 1% that we keep on pushing. That's where we start making that difference. So when we look at our lives and we see areas of fixing, the way we fix it is there's another way to blow it up. That's not for now. The one way we fix it is we do what's called +1. What's one more step between what is comfortable and now what is uncomfortable? What's comfortable is what my brain knows how to do. It's comfortable for me to talk to this person. It's comfortable for me to get to this job. It's comfortable for me to read these words. I practiced it. It's comfortable for me. Things that are comfortable, when we're together now, hopefully we'll be together for a while, let's just like use words together. Comfortable in our world means there are neuro connections. That's what comfortable means. It's comfortable for me to look at a yellow box and go, Cheerios. Why? Because there's a neuro connection. It is uncomfortable for me to figure out what the Chinese word for that is. I will be why? There's no neuro connection. That's all there is. Comfortable equals neuro connections. There's physical challenge, but that's what it is. If I run on a treadmill and my body has all the right connections to know how it feels like when I run, and my lungs and my muscles are all working in tandem, and I start running every day, it's going to be comfortable for me to run the first mile. So that's it. My body is programmed now, whether it's the strength of the muscles, whether it's sending the oxygen to my lungs, whatever it does, it knows we're running, the first mile is mine. If I push past it, that's when it becomes uncomfortable. So when we look at ourselves and we ask ourselves how we could be better, the approach of I'm not enough and I'm not good enough, that's not helpful. The approach has to be I'm really good, or I'm good enough, but I can always get better. Everyone can always get better. Everyone can always grow. I got an email yesterday from a great guy who's almost 60 years old. He said, is it too old? I'm like, oh, you crazy? Too old? You're just getting started. You're just getting started. We're living in the most incredible time ever. I know people who started their whole lives again at 70. I know them. And they created such incredibleness. If your eyes are open, we can get 1% better today, every day for the rest of your life, always. And the way you do it is you look at your life and you look for the things that you feel are not there enough, which could be everything, but that's okay. And you pick one thing and you go 1% better. You identify in your mind. Then once you have the tools that we spoke about last week, visualization and review, You can sit in the morning. You can look at your day. You can say, I'm going to probably do this today. And this is what 1% better looks like to me if I do this. I'm most probably going to see my children today. And 1% better is being more patient with them past 9:15. I'm most probably going to read today, and 1% or better means reading with a pen so that I can take notes in the margin. I'm going to probably have to eat today, and 1% better means when I come to eat, I'm going to reach for the healthier option. One time in the morning. You see the difference between that way of thinking and just like rolling into life and wondering why we're not more? I spoke to somebody recently, and she said to me she was struggling with something, and she said, "Listen, hopefully God will put it in." And I'm a big, huge believer that God will put this in. I believe God puts everything in, and I'm like, I don't think that's what He wants. She's like, no, I don't feel a certain way, but like, hopefully God will put it in. I'm like, I kind of think God wants you to work on that. She's like, no, He'll put it in. I'm like, I know He could put it in. I don't think the way life works is you sit back and not work on it and like wait for God to like put it in. Like as if like I don't want to do the work. So how about this? Can I order it from Amazon.God instead? I don't think it works like that. I think He could do anything. And I think ultimately He will put it in. But I think there are times in life where God's like, do the work, and then I'll give it to you as a gift. This is a big concept in spirituality. It's called in Hebrew Yagata Umatzata. Work, and then God gives it to you. But that's sort of, it's sort of an exciting way to live, don't you think? Don't you think? I mean, like, I kind of think it's an exciting way to live your life. You can wake up every morning and find something to work on, and then go work on it and keep working on it until it feels comfortable. It means you can work on one little thing for a week, and then it feels more comfortable to you. And then like slowly your brain adapts to it, and that feels like it's normal. And then once that feels like it's normal, you start feeling like, oh, wait a second, I could do this again. I could do this again. I can move. It's like running it's like a long distance runner. Oh, wait a second, I've been running a mile for a week and a half. This feels okay. I don't feel like I'm going to collapse after mile 1. Maybe I should push it to 1.2 miles or 1.5 miles. And then all of a sudden that feels comfortable. And you wake up one morning and you're running a marathon. Why shouldn't that apply to every area of our lives? Oh, it's comfortable to act this way, to talk this way. I got another friend of mine, I'll never forget, he was working as a lawyer. And he said to me one day, he saw me. He said to me, I don't bill right. I don't bill proper. I don't know, I guesstimate, but it's someone else's money. I'll never forget this. He goes, I'm changing. And every day, I watched it for him. We used to pray together in the same mincha, in the same afternoon service, a certain office. And every day he would tell me, I got my first part of my day down. He worked on his day. So like he was taking notes, right? So this is when he created his bills, they were to the minute. He didn't want to take $1 from somebody else. He didn't say like 6 hours worked on the brief. He counted, but he couldn't count all day. So he counted the first few hours. And then he extended it to lunch. And then he figured out how to do it. And then over the course of a few weeks, he figured out how to build his whole day around a way to comfortably count his minutes so that when he billed his clients, they were to the minute. I'm telling you this because I watched it. This guy went from being a lawyer in a middle tier law firm to being a wealthy real estate guy. And I believe it was because he realized that when you take care of somebody's money, when you have honesty and integrity, that is the vessel of blessing. Slowly, +1, +1, +1. That's our goal for today. Try it. Email me. Try it. We're going to talk about it again because if we can get this down together, we're moving. We're going to be moving. That train's going to start chugging along that track. We're going to become people that we're already people we're proud of, but even more proud of. All right, you can check this out on all the platforms that it's on. I wish you guys not a good or great day. I wish you guys an awesome day. All of us should have an awesome day. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I really, with God's help, can't wait to speak to you tomorrow.